All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Ricka Amato. This is Amato Talk TV. On the phone line with me is our guest out of New York, Eric Rush. He's author of the book Negrophilia, From Slave Block to Pedestal, America's Real Obsession. He's also known as the Other Rush in his syndicated column with WorldNet Daily. In studio with me is the one, the only, the co-founder of Tea Party Express and the host of Tea Party Express Radio, Howard Kaloogian.
It's good to be with you, Eric. It really is.
Yeah, you know, we're on the radio together all the time. Not together, but
not together.
Crossing ships in the wind.
That's right, Rick. You know, it's a great show though on the radio because it's your show, and you allow us to have an hour every week, and it's terrific because we give voice to the Tea Parties throughout the nation as they call in and tell us what's happening.
That's great. That's great. Speaking of the nation, speaking of what's happening. Both you and Eric Rice have been watching Wisconsin. You have been more than watching. You had boots on the ground.
We did.
To update us on Wisconsin.
Yes, we were actually in Wisconsin for 5 days prior to the election, and that was our third time visiting Wisconsin because, you know, I was the chairman of the Recall Gray Davis Committee here in California.
That's right.
And so we had a legitimate reason to recall Gray Davis. He dug us into a pit of $28 billion as a deficit and then hid it and lied about it. But in Wisconsin, just the opposite occurred. So that they actually dug out of a $3.6 billion deficit and went into a surplus in 1 year without any tax increases.
Wow.
In fact, he lowered property taxes in Wisconsin. So the recall process was being abused. It was used as a revenge tool. And at the end of our crusade there in Wisconsin, just about everybody agreed with that. And so we knew from the get-go on the ground that we were going to win that.
Tremendous victory there, and what a message it sent all across America.
Oh, without a doubt. It not only encourages every other reform governor to continue with the reforms, which would have perhaps been stifled. It would have probably stopped all the reform movements going on throughout the country if Scott Walker had been recalled. But more than that, it tells us that the time for government to get its house in order is upon us. And you cannot spend your way out of a deficit. You cannot borrow your way out of a debt. You have to get your fiscal house in order, and that includes bringing some of these horrendous expenses of the pensions under control.
Eric Rush, I know you've been watching Wisconsin. In fact, you've been writing about it. I'd like to get your take on this, but a quick question. It was interesting that Obama did not go to Wisconsin. Of course, it alienated his relationship perhaps there with organized labor. Do you think, Eric Rush, that perhaps the president knew something? They were doing some internal polling and said, let's pass on this one?
I think more likely than not, that's exactly what happened because, you know, you're not going to get anything truthful out of the establishment press at this point, what a lot of people call the mainstream media. But yeah, I think he was probably pretty, you know, savvy to the point where he knew that it was not going to bode well for the recall effort if he were to, you know, throw his support behind it because, you know, the lion's share of the people who are fed up with government out there does include, you know, it's not just Tea Party folks or hardcore Republicans or just independents, but, you know, there's a certain amount of his base that were coming out against that too, and obviously he does not want to advertise that.
Yeah, he brings up a good point. Who knows how many union workers, rank and file union workers.
In fact, the person that Scott Walker was running against was the person he defeated in 2010, and the margin was actually larger than the original vote in 2010 after all of this nonsense and all these tens of millions of dollars of commercials against Scott Walker. You know, the problem with the union position was that the sky didn't fall. They had predicted that everything was going to collapse, and yet the state is better off, the counties are better off, cities are better off, school districts are better off, the teachers, you know, the teachers union was heavily against Scott Walker, but the teachers are better off because they weren't laid off. Instead, their jobs were preserved, and some school districts even saved enough money by shopping and going out into the marketplace to buy health insurance that they gave school teachers a raise.
Interesting conclusion. Do you think, Howard, that this predicts anything for Ohio in terms of the presidential election? Right now, Obama apparently has a slight lead according to the polls in Ohio.
Yeah, actually both Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania are all in play right now. And those were all states that should be solidly, well, maybe not Ohio, but Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin should all be solidly in the Democrat corner. If I were to ask you, Rick, that what would happen if a Republican has trouble winning Texas? You'd say, oh my goodness, if he's going to have trouble winning Texas, there's no hope for the Republican. Well, it's the same for Wisconsin and Michigan. If a Democrat is having trouble winning Wisconsin and Michigan, there's really no hope for him to win nationally. And that's what this election did. It put Wisconsin in play. Yeah, because the ground troops now in Wisconsin are well practiced. The Republicans have rehearsed their ground game, and they turned out more votes than the union-sponsored Democrat left did, in spite of the fact that the left had all that money on the union side.
Eric Rush, anything you want to add to that as it relates to Wisconsin?
Well, yeah. As far as Wisconsin goes, I mean that was a stellar outcome for a candidate who, by the time he got to the to the election.
I get all choked up at the victory, too.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I got all choked up. I mean, he had done, according to the other side, he had done everything except killed Santa Claus. And he came out with a great victory, and I think it's really important that those states are put into play.
Yes.
My dad was from Wisconsin, and of course it was a different state back then. But where there are doubts, and again, it's not going to be advertised by the press, but we know that it does not bode well for Obama with these kinds of things.
In fact, let me add to that. The unions tried several times. They tried last summer with recalls against the senators, and they didn't win there. They tried a recall against the Supreme Court justice in Wisconsin, Prosser, and Prosser was reelected. And then they tried again with the recall against both the governor and the lieutenant governor, and they lost at each level. They don't give up, but they have been told no very solidly, and I think that the voters of Wisconsin have had enough of it now, and they know not to go with that side because they can't trust it.
What's interesting, Eric and Howard, is that people sort of forget that Wisconsin was ground zero for the Occupy movement.
Yes, that's right. And that really is the choice here this fall. We have a choice between two competing visions. It's not just a choice. It's not just another presidential election. It's the choice on the left of the vision of Occupy America, where they're redistributing your wealth and confiscating your income, and if they don't get their way, there's lawlessness and riots. And on the right, frankly, it's the Tea Party America, where we're going to hopefully defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and leave the country better off for our children and our grandchildren than the one that we received.
There you go. Eric, let me ask you this. I hope this doesn't sound condescending, not meant to be. I mean, I always chuckle when a host asks a black guest a black-themed question as if they're somehow the overall expert on all black issues. With that disclaimer, we're seeing President Obama's polling numbers dropping among blacks, according to some of the results I've seen, because of social issues, more than likely. Maybe social and economic issues, the gay marriage thing. Given that black America tends to be more conservative on social issues than not. Your thoughts on black support for this president going into November?
Oh, absolutely. There's a certain contingent of blacks that are going to vote for him no matter what because they've just been that sufficiently indoctrinated by the left. But, the working class folks, the people who are middle class and they see what's happening to the economy, for them the honeymoon is over. And they have now learned that a black president can be every bit as, whether you want to call it incompetence or whether you want to call it an ideologue in the terms of Obama's leftism. They don't like where it's going, and so he's losing support there. That definitely is a factor among blacks. And it may not seem like a lot at first, but the left has been very successful with its indoctrination of blacks. But we're going to see that change. I'm confident in that.
Howard Kaloogian, less than 40 seconds. What can we expect from the Tea Party Express in an immediate future?
Oh, we're going to be going cross-country again, and we're going to be concentrating on the Senate. We won the House for the Republicans last time in spite of the fact that they don't realize it. But frankly, the Scott Brown election in 2000,
you guys were big in that.
That foreshadowed what would happen with the House. Well, Wisconsin foreshadows what's going to happen in the Senate this time. It's going to become more conservative. With Richard Murdoch in Indiana and Ted Cruz in Texas, we're going to have a conservative Senate.
All right. Eric Rush in New York, thank you for joining us today. Howard Kaloogian in studio, great to see you.
Good seeing you.
Thank you.
You guys stay in touch. Keep up the great work, both of you. And after this break, we'll lighten it up. It's called Listen Up with political satirist, stand-up comic Sutton Porter. I'm Ricka Amato. We're back with humor after this.